Timing.
Yeah, nick of time. Off-premise catering, and it's classic.
Perfect. All right, we're going to get started. So I want to welcome everyone to this Q&A webinar for the catering industry, sponsored by Customized Culinary Solutions and Strategic Hospitality Search. My name is John Reed. I've been in the culinary profession going on 38 years, in the last 20 in the catering industry. As we all have, we've witnessed 9/11, the 2008 downturn. As you, I'm extremely curious about the future of the catering industry. As you have read and seen in the media, that the restaurant industry is front and center in the media, but the catering and contact dining world it's deeply impacted, but it doesn't get the press as we know. Personally, I want to say to the catering community, I believe that there is a future in catering, but I'm hopeful that it will change for the better. We wanted to get everyone together to share what's happening at large and small catering operations throughout the US. Of course, every catering company and operation is distinct and different. However, there are commonalities across all levels and types of businesses. We all have the same questions. I've known our moderator, Joe D'Alessandro, for about 20 years. We got chatting a couple of weeks ago and thought it'd be a great idea to get our clients together and talk about their challenges and what they're thinking about as the COVID-19 issue continues. So we're fortunate to have them all with us today. So from coast to coast, from the East Coast, we have John Lawrence, co-owner of Pepper's Artful Events in Northborough, Massachusetts. John was literally born into the hospitality business, being the eldest son of a dietitian mother and a chef father. John joined his wife Susan in March 1988 as a chef for her startup gourmet takeout shop, doing a whopping $200,000 in his first year. Soon after, John replaced himself in the kitchen, moved to sales and business development. Pepper's is a boutique off-premise catering company doing business in Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. They have won numerous awards and is one of the only certified green caterers in New England. Pepper's evolution continues to provide a plant-focused menu in their on-site cafe, The Farmer and Fork. Aside from his active duties at Pepper's, John is also active with providing assistance to food-focused nonprofits, environmental fundraising events, and offers cooking classes to at-risk mothers who raise their children on a limited income. Please welcome John Lawrence. From the West Coast, please welcome our third John today, John Rudy, Senior Director of Catering with Bon Appetit Management in San Jose, California. A graduate of Michigan State University and the Culinary Institute of America, John is a lifelong caterer. Spending the majority of his career in off-premise catering, he's made a living consistently pivoting and adapting to the social and economic environment, allowing him to provide a unique view of today's situation. His 35 years of experience span operations, sales, marketing, and logistics, working in both corporate, consulting, and private sectors within the realms of catering, special event rental, and design. John is past president of Catering Executive Clubs of Chicago. Welcome, John. And from the center of the company, we have Cornell Gyro, CEO of Tasty Catering in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. Cornell is the Chief Executive Officer of Tasty Catering, a suburban Chicago-based corporate catering and event planning services company. He's responsible for overseeing the business growth strategy and overall operations. Born in Poland, Cornell came to the United States to live with his father when he was 10 years old. Having spent many hours at his father's construction company while growing up, he thought he would help run the family business upon graduation. This plan changed when the economic crash of 2008 occurred and he had to close his father's business. Cornell started his career with Tasty Catering more than 10 years ago. Over the years, he has held positions of increasing responsibility in new business development, customer relations, and logistics, always focused on the customer while upholding the company's core values. Cornell is an active member of Small Giants Community, an organization that identifies, connects, and develops purpose-driven business leaders. He is fluent in English, Polish, and Spanish. He earned a Bachelor's of Science in Business with emphasis in business administration and management from the University of Illinois, Chicago. Welcome, Cornell.
Thank you.
Now I want to turn it over to my co-host, Joe D'Alessandro, founder of Strategic Hospitality Search. Joe's firm has worked with caterers, restaurants, hotels, and food service for almost 20 years. Take it away, Joe.
Thank you, Chef. For those of you who don't know John Reed, he's the founder of Customized Culinary Solutions. His consultancy advises catering companies on menu strategy, operations, and John is one of the foremost experts in the country on how to harness technology to maximize profits in catering. He's an outstanding chef with many certifications who has deep experience in catering, from box lunches to the highest level gala that you can conceive. So grateful to be John's colleague and friend. And I echo John's sentiment. Our heart is with everybody who's been affected by this crisis. Of course, folks who've been affected in their health, and we pray for all to get well. And our thoughts and prayers are with everybody on the front line. And I know that includes food service people and catering, in addition to healthcare. And, you know, I got a kid who works at Target 30 hours a week, and worry about him being out there. So we're grateful for everybody who is supporting our country in this time. I started in catering in 1990 with Levy Restaurants, when Levy Restaurants was under $100 million in revenue. So I have lived and breathed on and offsite catering over the years. And to do it with excellence is so difficult. And it's hard to see so many catering companies that are a fabric of their community, part of the fabric of their community, be hit so hard by this crisis. We want none to fail. John Reed and I know very well the three leaders on this call. They're all active, innovative, and fighting on the front lines for their company, for their employees, for their communities. Like you, our panelists are taking on new information and market changes every day and pivoting on the fly, trying to figure out where the business is going today, tomorrow, and when this pandemic is over, and it will be over. So this is not a lecture, but it's perspective from three leading minds in modern catering. This hour-long webinar cannot calm every fear, and it cannot answer every question that you have, but we ask those who registered what questions you have for this panel. Questions right now about what caterers are facing. We got a ton of responses, honestly, more than we could possibly address in this hour. We reviewed every single one of them. Many of the questions overlapped, so we consolidated and we aggregated the questions. We're going to do our best to get to them all, but the hour is going to go by fast. So during the webinar, if you have a question, you can use the raise hand button through Zoom, and I will keep an eye on that, and I will do my best to get to your question if we can. So let's get started. I want to send the first question to John Lawrence. This question is about balancing clients' valid concerns with contractual commitments during a time when state requirements are only being put out a few weeks in advance, but clients need to plan months in advance. For clients who are postponing, are you having them pay their remaining balance? And payment at the original date it was due, or monthly payments up to the new date? And if not, how is your company staying open without that cash flow?
Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you and John for hosting this. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to meet with our peers and learn from my peers, et cetera. So as we most all experience, that one of the first questions out of the box when a client contacts us is, it's all about the money. How much is it going to cost me, et cetera. So it's always an overriding concern. And, you know, for us, we have to, you know, balance everything, you know, with the client's concerns and also the company. Now, every client that we're doing business with has a contract. There's an obligation, if you will, as far as making payments and et cetera. What we've been doing, because this is such an extraordinary experience, that what we've been doing is we couple of things. We look at what the contractually, what are we obligated? What are the client's obligations to us? And then we also have created a form where we are tracking what has been the investment. How much time have we spent with this client, tastings, proposals, revisions, outside vendors? What is our exposure? Or what have we invested in each individual client? And, it's always been our mantra to exceed our clients' expectations. So, on a case-by-case basis, if they change their event date, if they move it to another year, there's no fee, there's no extra fee for that. We encourage that, and that's what we're getting an awful lot of. Most of our business is postponing to 21 right now. Now, for the clients that who the date's not working, maybe it was a shower, maybe it was some other occasion, what have you, they're not going to reschedule. So then we look at what the investment has been, and and what was their obligation. And we've only had, I think it's only come up 4 times now. We're very fortunate. And so each of those cases, we've sweetened the pot a little bit, where they may have had an obligation to make a certain, where they're looking for a complete deposit back. What we have done is we've taken a look at what they have paid us. We've looked at how much we've invested in a particular client, and we explain it to them. We're basically kind of upfront, say, listen, we've got $1,200 or $1,500 or whatever that number is invested in this. So we're going to take that off of what we would have. If we would have owed the client a couple of $1,000, what have you, in their eyes, what have you, we just deduct what our investment has been, and we give them back a check. Most of the time, it's been the check that they get back has been more than they've expected, and needless to say, they're gracious. These days with social media and things like that, we always be conscious of let's just try to be more than fair. And I think that's always has served us well for the last 33 years. Cash flow, we're in a much smaller market than the 2 gentlemen who are joining us today. And I really appreciate hearing what they have to say. What we have done is, first thing, we stayed open as long as we could. And then when we recognized that the burn was going to quickly affect us, what have you, we furloughed everybody, myself, my wife, and everybody's on furlough. But the good thing for us, the great thing for us, is that we have been following small giants and the great game of business for the last couple of years, and incorporating those principles into our culture. And so actually, while everyone's furloughed, nearly everybody is actually working virtually. The sales team is still working on their own. There's plenty of Zoom meetings that go on. Event planners are still planning. So our company is working on, and clients are being taken care of. We're fielding phone calls. All calls are being sent remotely. So we're hanging on to cash. We did apply for the PPP. We have not pulled the trigger on it. The money's sitting in the bank, so the clock is ticking. We know we have 8 weeks. We just went through week 1 where we didn't implement it. We did get the $10,000, so thankfully that's helped us to pay our vendors. We pay all our vendors something every week, so that we want to keep them whole, and we don't want to be in as less of a hole as we possibly can when we fire up, what have you. So, number 1 is hang on to cash as best we can, and come up with a strategy that will keep the cash flow coming when we do restart.
Okay. All right. So the approach from the contractual commitments is assessing basically your equity in the relationship and the amount of time, the number of tastings that you've got invested, coming to something that coming to an amount that is equitable and gracious, so that everybody's happy, and returning the balance of the deposit back to the client. And then as far as trying to keep cash flow, basically just cinching the belt as tight as it can possibly go, and trying to get everything that's offered in relief from the government. Cornell, your company is pretty similar to John's. Is there anything, in addition to his approach that Tasty Catering has done?
No, we actually do the same thing. We take a case by case basis, and most of the times we're able to reschedule and give maybe some kind of incentive to do, move those events and keep that deposit because it helps us our cash flow. But there's a lot of certain things that you have to look at. It also, with the relationships with the venues. If the venues, returning the whole deposit, it would not be a good look for a catering company to not do the same. But like I said, we've been lucky enough that we've been able to move a lot of our events to further dates, keep their deposits, and also we have returned some of those deposits minus the cost. So like John said, we take into consideration tastings and things like that. But we're extremely upfront with the client saying, hey, this is what we provided, and give them back the money, and we've been pretty successful. We had one complaint and one bad review that we tried all our options, and they were just not happy with the way it went. But like I said, there was cost to the tastings and things like that, and we were offering a lot of opportunities and options to kind of proceed and make it a win-win situation if this didn't end up to be that way, which is unfortunate. But I think that's how we've been able to handle it, and it's been working so far. And I hope that sooner or later we'll figure out, and the time will open up and we can continue having these events. But we know that the last quarter of the year is when a lot of rescheduling is happening, so capacity and all those things also come into consideration that we all have to look at, because there's only so much of us and staff and things like that, and venue space and meeting space that there is. So I know some of our vendor partners are worried about rentals and things like that because there might be an abundance of events, which we all hope for.
Okay. All right. So almost parallel approaches. John Rudy, the scope of your responsibilities are a little bit different than the two independent caterers. Just for our audience, can you give maybe a 10 or 20 second overview on the business that you oversee, and then if you want to weigh in on this first question?
Sure, no problem. I've spent my entire career in the off-premise industry, just like these gentlemen. And over the last couple of years, I've moved into the contract dining area, where I'm still in catering, and given the infrastructure that we have, it's still an off-premise situation, but it is in a contract dining environment and not in a private dining environment. So what we do day to day is similar. It's just the circumstances are a little bit different. And I think that, kudos to these two gentlemen, because I think the thing that ties them together, when you cut through the words, is the proactiveness in regards to reaching out to customers, right? Getting a list of customers, calling them proactively, not waiting for them to call you, coming from an area of care and concern. And I think when you do that, the customers understand and they appreciate it, and they're going to be there for you when you come back. So I think it's sage advice in regards to everybody's contract has something in there in regards to when something like this could or should happen. We just think it's going to be a rainstorm that's going to take a tent down. We don't think it's going to be a pandemic that's going to take 9 to 12 months worth of business down, but it is built into the contracts. And so it does thankfully give everybody a little wiggle room in regards to not giving the entire deposit back because of the unique situation. So the sage advice for sure, proactiveness in regards to coming from a place of care and concern is really good advice.
All right, excellent. And just so everybody knows, I front loaded the questions that were asked multiple times. So if we run out of time, know that the questions that seem to have been asked the most we're putting right up in front. So let me start with Cornell on this one. There were a lot of questions about food presentation. How will the effects of COVID change presentation? Will this be the end of buffets or the end of self-service only buffets? I know that Tasty Catering does a lot of drop-off business. Will past appetizers still be relevant, or will that change in the scope of people's fear for their safety and health? Will more companies switch to an individual item box or bowl? So what are your thoughts on that? Is this something that is that you're going to have to make changes in phases? Do you feel like there are changes that you're going to have to do that are permanent in nature? I asked like 19 questions. Sorry. Let's just start with one.
Okay. I wish I could say no, but I think at least in the short term it is, because there's, people are going to be more concerned and more conscious of these things. And, our core purpose at Tasty is to experience it through success, through teamwork, innovation, and community involvement. So, I think all three are especially critical now in that innovation part. So we already had in the past created a lot of individual meals, especially the specialized ones. And John Reed knows, because he's been assisting us in the past with a lot of consulting work, and we've done the vegan and kind of the dietary ones individually. But a couple of weeks ago, we created all of our hot meals being individual, because that's the need and that's the innovation, and that's kind of putting people's mind at ease. It's, we talked about going to the gas station and you see the plexiglass everybody has. And if the gas station doesn't have it, you're more conscious of it. And, you might not go to that gas station. So just kind of developing all those products and all those services, trying to, brainstorm and create those different lines of service, because as a business owner, you have to be able to be agile and set yourself up that maybe this is not what's going to happen, but the worst case scenario, you have to be prepared. And if you're not, then you're going to be behind the eight ball. So every day we have our operation team. We are lucky enough that we're fully operational, because we do have some diversified business, some contract baking and things like that we're able to have all our staff working. But we continue having our leadership team and our sales teams who are working remotely continue to brainstorm ideas. And something cool that we thought about is bringing some of our key big clients and asking them, what are your worries? And hearing it from their end, because right now we're all trying to think amongst ourselves, what are we worried about? But I think the critical aspect is asking your clients, especially the ones that you do a lot of business, saying, hey, what are your worries? And then working backwards, because there might be a lot of critical information from them that we didn't even think about. Our big segment of our business in the summers is picnics, and thousands and thousands of people. We do up to 6,000 to 7,000 folks. So how is that service going to look? Sneeze guards and individual meals and gloves and things like that. So I think everything is on the table right now, and you're doing a detriment to your business if you're not brainstorming or creating some of these processes that are, going to be maybe not used, but it's important to have those options. And I think also we were talking about, different service aspects that some clients might be a little more lax in their worry about, pandemic or food safety, and some might be really high alert. So giving clients options too, and not, pinning them down into one service aspect. But yeah, we're having talks every day. We're thinking of ideas, and we're being proactive and letting our clients know, hey, this is what we're doing. What do you want to do, and things like that. But I think it's critical, and it is going to change how it's going to be. We're not 100% sure, because it depends on the government and what rules and regulations are, set by health departments in the state and the government and things like that. But, looking at sneeze guards, not having buffet style, but having your staff serve on the back end. And a lot of things I've been hearing about is, disposables, because, forks and knives that are China are not having to be washed, and they're not reused. So my suggestion and what we're doing is continue having these conversations every day and brainstorming and participating in webinars like this and getting ideas from everybody else. And the next step, like I mentioned, is just reaching out to our clients and asking them what their concerns are, and working backwards and setting up systems and processes to alleviate some of their concerns, because at the end of the day, their concerns are what's going to drive them back to you for food service, or they're going to go find somewhere else if we're not able to provide that service that they're looking for.
Okay. All right. I mean, I can see how that opens up so much, so much change, right? You're going from setting up a buffet and dropping it off to individual meals. How are those stored? How are they kept warm? How does that change the labor model around a drop-off event? So there's a lot to consider there. So if we go from drop-offs, let's say drop-offs and picnics, to John Lawrence, to a super high-end wedding, So I know that Peppers does a lot of those. And I know that you're known for beautiful, unique past hors d'oeuvres and grazing tables. On the higher end, how do you see that changing in the immediate?
A great question. I'd love to tell you I have the magic answer. 'Cause there's no question that we have put ourselves into a niche, you know, and you could say we backed ourselves into a corner, whatever. We had early on, 30 years ago, we were doing an awful lot of drop-off business, and we found that, you know, over, you know, oh, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that it wasn't what we loved doing, number one. And it was just full of sharks, if you will. You know, I mean, trying to compete against everybody else in our business world who was doing the drop off, and it was such a slim margin business that at the end of the day, we just do events. I mean, that's what we do. We're going to have to come up with some other creative solutions that will not be, you know, in addition to doing catering. I think the catering is something that we cannot assure ourselves that is going to be strong, or at least be viable as far as paying all our bills over the next 6 months, what have you. So we're going to be doing pop-ups. We're going to be doing virtual cooking lessons. We've right now, there's awful lot of things on the table, and so that's what we're focusing on. Things that we've actually already done. We're just going to do more of them. Regarding the weddings, and our couples still want to get married, and it's amazing to me how many of them in June are still holding on to the event. They have not changed their date. They're not looking to change. They want to hold that wedding. The governor has a lot to say about that. Our governor came from healthcare. You know, he ran Harvard Pilgrim healthcare systems, what have you. So he's a healthcare guy. And right now, he continues to give us the bad news in small doses, which is kind of prudent, I guess, you know, which is why the weddings that we have are still trying to hold on. But it will change. There's no question that I think it's going to be really strange, but I can see wait staff teams, as long as they want to work, I think they're going to be working in face masks. I think when they pass hors d'oeuvres, they will be passing wearing face masks, to be honest with you, you know. As strange as that's going to be when somebody walking up to me with a face mask, what have you, you know, we will of course be talking to our clients. I think Cornell is right on that. The client experience has to be something that they're partner with. We have to collaborate with them. We have to listen to them. We can assure them, you know, to the end that we are going to adhere to all possible sanitation, changing of gloves, sanitizing everything, etc. The client will, you know, between the law and what the client wants will dictate maybe our final execution. But I think in the short term, I don't see buffets as being, you know, certainly no family style dinners. Those are gone, what have you. Buffets, I suspect that buffets may well go as well. Social distancing, I see tables that are, you know, probably going in for wider farm tables that are at least 4 foot wide, what have you. That's not going to hit the 6 foot, but, you know, it might make guests feel, you know, we've been doing a lot of farm table action anyway, so I could see that as opposed to the round tables. You know, action stations, I think we won't be passing food directly to a client. I can see us pulling out the pizza peels and maybe, you know, doing something like that and try to obviously put on a smile and do the best we can with that. We also have some facades that we did for action stations that were like faux food trucks. I could see us working out of these faux food trucks in a you know, as an action station, if you will. And like I said, if we might pass that taco via peel or what have you. I mean, I don't know. Everything's open, you know. But listening to the client and working with the client to work this out, what's going to be a palatable situation, I think is a step that we will we have always taken anyways, but we'll ask much more in depth questions, I guess.
Okay. John, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on high-end catering? Let's just assume, I'm sorry, John Rudy. Let's assume that things open up in a couple of months and the government and conventional wisdom says, great, let's get together and have your weddings come August or September. You're going through the booking, the banquet event order, and it says butler passed hors d'oeuvres. Do you see, even if it's a pizza peel or a tray or a whatever vehicle, multiple items on that vehicle in passing them and people being comfortable with that?
I think if you draw a line at the next couple of months, yeah, no, people aren't going to be comfortable passing small bites because someone else might have picked one up and put it down or something like that. And they can't actually see people putting that dish together and putting it on. So I think in the next couple of months, this is a tiered strategy, right? You're going to have part of your strategy, forecasted strategy based on us knowing nothing, 30%, what kind of business is going to come back 30% over X amount of months, the next percent over the next amount of months, the next amount over the next amount of months. Because at some point it will loosen up, but it's going to have to be a tiered approach for sure. And so I don't see there being past hors d'oeuvres in the near future. But I think that it'll also change based on what market you're in. I mean, you have people in Florida and Georgia and other places, it seemed like they're a little bit more open to, and even Southern California, going down to the beach, so there are folks that it's not going to bother, but there are folks that it is going to bother. So it's a tough question, but I think playing it on the safer side is always going to be the best way to go. And looking after your own people, how much risk does the caterer want to absorb with their own folks, right? So we're talking about what the guest thinks and what the guests think that they might want or need or be exposed to, but what kind of risk do we want to put our staff in, right? So do we want them working a party for 1,000 people where there's a plate up line and you're 6 inches apart from each other? Is that what we want to do for our folks? So there's an internal client that's just as important as our external client, because without those folks, nobody's going to get serviced anyway. So it's a complicated question, and I think again, working from a place of care and concern for all the constituents at the same time, you come up with something. But sage advice, there's some questions later on. Sage advice in regards to working with your customer, right? We're working on a lot of solutions now, spinning our wheels without talking to the customer. And I think we have to talk to them and say, hey, when you get into, for instance, you're entertaining customers and you want them to come in a sales capacity, if the only option you have is our staff coming in with masks on and them having a bento box and them sitting 6 feet apart, are you going to go through with that? Or are you going to say, you know what, we're going to stick with this virtual game for a little bit longer because the ROI and the experience that you're going to be able to provide is just not going to be the experience that's needed when you bring people together. So there's I think we have to talk to customers and say, yeah, we have all these great ideas. What are your thoughts? Would you even buy into this concept? Would your customers want this kind of experience? Is that kind of experience that you think is going to help you, with whatever, business solutions you're looking for, whether it's a cultural solution with your employees or whether it's closing a piece of business or whether it's defining your brand. So it's complicated.
Okay. So that kind of answered the next question a little bit too. We had a question come in. Do you see on-site cooking such as cave cooking and display cooking being eliminated and therefore caterers needing more fully cooked proteins and prepared food as options? So from what I'm starting to gather from the three of you is that the amount of on-site cooking for off-premise catering would probably be decreasing, cave cooking and the like.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because cooking on site may provide the most transparency possible to your guests where they're the most comfortable. So if you're doing an action station, they can see everything that's covered under a sneeze guard and they can see everything that's on ice, and you see it cooked to order with somebody who's wearing a face mask and gloves and every care is being taken, they might be super comfortable with that, as opposed to, traditional off-premise catering, Wizard of Oz, pay no attention what's going behind the curtain. nor do you want them to ever go behind the curtain. You know, that's not a place we ever wanted them to be, and certainly we don't want them to go there in the future. And then there's government enforcement, right? I mean, let's face it, if we're realistic about caterers and you go to a gala for a 1,200 person event, the caterer lives in the danger zone, right? Even though they have refrigerated trucks, that stuff comes off the truck, and you know, the time is ticking, and we're cooking in caves, right? We don't see the health inspector coming to those events, and if they did, we know exactly what would be happen. So who exactly is going to police this in the future? You know, when the business starts picking up again, it's not going to get policed probably to anybody's comfort level, because there's not going to be enough resources at the government level to increase health inspectors by 400% to enforce all the things that are going to be enforced upon us. So in the long run, probably some really super positive things will come up in regards to personal safety and food safety for folks who don't generally follow it, that do have to. And then there's folks like us that have been in the business for a long time, that have followed, you know, pretty stringent guidelines that will even become more stringent. So again, interesting times.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I want to segue a little bit to financial again. John Lawrence, we got a lot of questions about government relief, and I know that you've been on the front lines of this. Is there any legislation to extend the 8 weeks of payroll, since most event industry companies won't be able to hold large events within 8 weeks? And then in your studies on this, have you seen any group leading a charge to try to get government funding for late summer or early fall, when most caterers won't have been able to ramp back up because of the lack of corporate business and nervous wedding clients?
Great question, and certainly that's the holy grail that most of us are waiting for. My wife and I were on a conference call with our local congressman, and he pretty much has said that Mitch McConnell is not interested at all. Didn't give us any hope, be honest with you. You know, obviously this is affecting so many different industries. You know, I mean, you know, the bottom fell out for us, but entertainment, musicians, I mean, you name it. You know, this is broad based, like we'll never experience again, hopefully. But yeah, he's not giving us any hope that there would be an extension, you know. And so we're faced with, you know, we did get the PPP, and we're not pulling a trigger on it just yet. We know it lasts for 8 weeks, but we couldn't see bringing everybody back in for 8 weeks and then running it out, you know, when we had really no assurances that the government was going to open up. I mean, we haven't peaked yet in Massachusetts. I'm not sure how my other two colleagues here are doing, whatever, but you know, the closest city to us is Worcester, which is only 20 minutes from my home base, and they still have not peaked. They're still having some of their new highs as far as hospital admissions and things like that. So, you know, those are the things that are affecting when do we pull the trigger? The money's cheap at 1%. It's a low investment. I mean, we're not going to get money that inexpensive anywhere. So before June 30th, you know, we're going to pull the trigger, and we're going to pull it as close as we can to. I mean, within 3 weeks of that is when we probably will be pulling a trigger. Sooner if we saw some sunlight, if you will. Because we want to get our people ramped up. We have some ideas that we're going to be, you know, exploring, and then we'll adjust. I mean, we'll run with our best ideas that complement our businesses and our things that we've done anyways. We're very comfortable with. But yeah, I wish I had good news for my colleagues, but I'm not hearing anything, and perhaps someone else has heard something I haven't.
So hearing what you're doing so it's you've got the funding, but it's kind of sitting in a separate account, almost, you know, figuratively, and you're not dispersing the PPP funds. And then perhaps when you use them out of formula for them to become a grant, perhaps down the road you might be able to make an argument with the powers that be and say, hey, we're kind of a special case. We don't think we should have to repay these because we're different, or you just resolve that it'll just turn into a loan?
Yeah, I mean, we I mean, I'm sure everybody's up to speed on this. 75% of that loan has to be used towards employee salaries. Um, they are it's loosely written, so it's loosely written to interpret how it would be forgiven. And when we first applied, I says I'm not even gonna touch this money unless we comply 100% to have it forgiven. I don't want to be on the hook for 500 grand to the feds, what have you. I've calmed down a bit and said, well, you know what? It's only 1%. Yes, I got to pay it back in 2 years. 21 looks pretty good. So at this point in time, most of our staff is making more money now on unemployment than they were when they were working. So they're not hurt right now. They would rather be working. If I pull the trigger tomorrow, they would jump at the chance to get rid of the unemployment, what have you. But yeah, the PPP right now is in a separate account. We want to have absolute traceability for how we allocate it. We will stay within the 75%, at least initially. So we get forgiven for whatever, we legitimately use it for, what have you. But I have no faith that the government is going to make any special changes to it that's going to positively affect us,
Okay. Okay. Any other perspective, Cornell or John Rudy, on finance or PPP or government stimulus?
Yeah, we did receive the PPP also, but we're just planning for the worst. So we're assuming it as a loan. Like I said, we're a little bit different because of our ownership group's always been about diversification. So both Joe and John, you guys know that there's several sister companies that we have. So like I said, we have the baking company that's been helping us, with orders because the Chicago Public Schools, they're feeding all their kids and their families. So our orders have actually increased because of that. So we're able to, share staff as we always have been. And also, our reputation on the corporate delivery side has been extremely well for years now. So like I mentioned before, we're feeding National Guards, we're feeding some of the hospitals, some of the essential workers. So we're seeing hours. So our most of our folks are receiving anywhere between 20, 30 hours a week. But like I mentioned, is that PPP loan, we did get it, but we're planning on being at a loan, and at between 0.5 or 1%. There's no other rate that you can get that type of money with that type of interest. So we're just using it, holding it until we really need it. Hopefully we won't, but we just want to prepare ourselves for the worst. And if it does get forgiven, that's a bonus for us. But as a business, we can't, hold on to that thing or that hope, and we're just kind of preparing for the worst. But like I said, the downside is, the more people get sick, the kind of more orders we get because of the National Guard and the healthcare. So it's kind of, business wise, it's good for business. It's good for our people because they're getting hours. Obviously, on the personal side, nobody wants to see this. So, like I said, we're just glad that we're able to help out and provide some of those meals, keep our folks employed, and, plan accordingly and plan for the worst and hope for the best. And as a business, I think, you have to do that and have different scenarios and things like that to play out, and constant communication with everybody is important right now.
Okay. Cornell, let's stick with you. There are third-party delivery companies that take a 10% fee for any catering that they book for you. I don't know if you're engaged with any of them, but so what referral companies have you used, or can you recommend any?
We haven't used any. And once again, our core motto from the beginning has been picnics and deliveries. So, probably it used to be probably 90% of our business. Right now, we're probably 35% delivery and 65 events and picnics and that. But, we have a solid business group, and we always look into those things. So, like DoorDash and things like that. So it's hard for us to say, but we're always kind of looking at those options, and it depends on where you are in your business. If you're trying to attack one area, and let's say you have one delivery per day to Rosemont area, and you can, help get additional orders on that same truck where the expenses, you have to pay the gas, you have to pay the labor charge for your delivery guys. So stacking either deliveries on top of that or below that could make sense, but I know there's a percentage charge for that. So just have to look at your business, do the cost, and look at it if it makes sense. Right
Okay.
now, sometimes we're looking at, we're delivering outside of delivery bubble, and it's, we're not looking at making money. It's, can we break even? Does it make sense? We get people hours, we're able to help our clients. So it's just on case by case basis. But I know there's been in several states talk from the government about limiting what those charges can be and what. I believe in San Francisco it's 17% now. I heard in Chicago they're trying to limit what those third parties can charge a restaurant because some of them are outrageous and you just can't even break even. So I think it depends on where you are in your stage of the business, and if you're trying to attack a different city or a different market or a different area, that it might make sense because the more business you can get, on the same truck with the same delivery guy, it's economies of scale. And so you just have to look at your business operations, what you're looking at, and some of those things where we're almost about to pull the trigger is more for marketing wise. It's getting into the doors of those clients that maybe they don't know about Tasty, not had a chance, or they're just loyal to different caterers, and it might be another opportunity for us to get in the door, show them our meals, and use it that way. So
Okay. So John Lawrence or John Rudy, have you worked with any of these? Thumbs up, thumbs down, or something that you think anybody in our audience should pursue?
No, I haven't. I've used it in a different way in regards to when our capacity is over what it could be, and we still have to service some customers. We might provide that as a service and say, hey, we'll take care of it through Easy Cater or something like that, and they'll be a partner to us. But as far as farming the business out for them to deliver our food, we haven't done it before.
Okay.
I have no experience with it either, Joe, and our margins are too thin, and I don't relish jumping into that.
Okay. John Rudy, what are contract caterers and exclusive venue operators, such as cultural or corporate on-site, saying about reopening?
It's more about what questions they're asking than what are they saying, because there's so much uncertainty going on. So they're taking what we're saying and saying you should be talking to all your customers and trying to find out as much information as you can to see how they need to react. But they're asking all the same questions that we're asking. What are going to be the parameters that the government's going to place on social distancing? How big a groups are folks? Are you hearing anything in regards to how big a special event can be, from 10 to 50, 75 to 200? How fast is that going to scale? They're asking, have you talked to any customers as to what their temperature is going to be for investment? Are they still, because a lot of folks that plan special events will come back, they might not have the funds anymore for that special event. So they're asking a lot of questions as opposed to saying anything, because they want to see how they can react, how they can reinvent their venue, right? So do they have to invest in their venue and make it more palatable for a retail market? Meaning, could you use it for photo shoots? Could you use it for car showings? Could you use it for other things that ordinarily maybe your venue didn't use before? But because you're not going to bill it for special events, how can you monetize the venue on a different platform, or wasn't a platform that you had before? So I think those are the things that people are asking and trying to reinvent themselves. So just like we as caterers are trying to reinvent ourselves with maybe different revenue streams and different offerings and talking to our customers what they want, they're trying to broaden their horizons, say, okay, who are our customers before that had special events, and would they have a need for the venue in another capacity? Some of them are looking at venues as temporary office spaces now. So if you can only have 30%, 60%, 75% of your people come back to the building at work, would you be open to having some of those folks work remotely in another building where they could still have some sort of team building and culture going on and be in one space and still be safe distance? So they're trying to be as creative. From what I've heard, they're trying to be as creative as they can, as well as addressing, what their venue could be and what it used to be.
Sure. John Lawrence, I know you have very close ties with your botanical garden, and Pepper's Artful Events operates a venue within that beautiful space. I'm assuming are they closed, or are they allowing folks coming in under social distancing?
Yeah, they're closed, and they are struggling, obviously trying to come up with the magic formula. They have recently furloughed 50% of their staff. They were holding off for the longest time, but they were bleeding profusely. Their endowment has gone into the toilet as well. So they're looking at a couple of things right now. So nearly all the venues in our area are the museums and whatever, they're doing virtual tours, virtual visits, if you will, for free. So they're burning through cash. Tower Hill in particular, as an outdoor garden venue, we have another venue that we have a close relationship with. They're looking at scheduled admissions. So it'd be something like every 8 minutes, they would allow groups of 2 to come in, if you will, to walk the grounds, not allowing anybody in the building at this point in time. We're working with that Tower Hill venue to see about doing when they order their tickets online, that they would have the opportunity to order a box lunch as well, and then arrange for a pickup when they come in on their scheduled time. But certainly very diminished, guest admissions is what they're looking at. We haven't addressed a large piece of our summer business at Tower Hill was a free Thursday event where it was free admission on Thursdays after 3 o'clock. We were running a beer garden, and at that point in time, none of that looks like it's going to happen at this point in time. So they're scrambling for ideas. They're talking to us and everybody else they can talk to right now, but there's no magic formula going on over there.
Okay. All right. I see we're already running a little bit short of time. We've only got a few minutes left. Several folks asked this question. I want to make sure that it gets asked to the panel. And I think it affects John Lawrence and John Rudy maybe more than it affects you, Cornell, because Tasty Catering seems to be more operational. But John Lawrence, how are you using this time to prepare for reopening, knowing that you don't know exactly when that is, but how are you making the best use of time?
Yeah, great question. So we started a good 6 or 7 weeks ago. We had never done a virtual meeting 8 weeks ago. And we had talked about, hey, we should probably think about doing this. Now all of a sudden we're all doing it. And it's being run by various groups. But there's probably 7 to 8 meetings that are happening on a weekly basis from all the different groups, taking the examples from Small Giants and the Great Game. Staff are percolating up great ideas from the bottom. And it's just amazing. I mean, it's some really cool ideas that they're coming up with. And we're kind of allowing each one of those groups to kind of vet out those ideas, think like an owner, act like an owner. Okay, how would that materialize? Is there a margin? Does it fit our business? Is it, one thing that we have found over the 33 years and all the different modest recessions by comparison is that we always stuck to our core values and our cultural values of customer service and food. So everything that we're coming up with is going to be reflective of who we are as a company. But I'm pretty inspired by the ideas that are coming up, what have you, so that's why we're holding off, we're kind of, as far as opening, we're doing well with the virtual right now. Obviously, come June 1, we're going to be serious. I won't be surprised if we're not open by June 1, but we're maximizing, at the end of April and May to just get ready and to have backup plans. The thing about our company is we can change. We're not such a big corporation that we can't turn on a dime, and that's going to be the saving grace for us, is that we we vet an idea. It seemed like a good idea. Let's get the social media going. Let's get everything going. Let's see if we can get some traction on this. Let's give it time to, to work itself out. But meanwhile, let's have another one, in the can, and maybe a lighter schedule, but new, fresh ideas that keep the cash flowing and keep the doors open until 21, because so much business now is on 21. That's the only thing now. Let's not dig a tremendous hole that we can't survive or get out of in 21. So that's what
Okay.
we're doing.
All right, John Rudy, is your team experiencing similar practices right now?
Yeah, we are. First, a big plug for these two gentlemen in regards to their commitment to open book finance. The number of years they've been in it is putting them in a position where they can actually be on this webinar today, where folks who maybe aren't as fiscally literate, and they're more importantly, their team's not being fiscally literate, wouldn't would have already closed their doors, and you wouldn't be looking for their advice. So for them to have the vision and forethought and the wherewithal to invest in their people to help them put them in a position like this is kudos to you guys. It's super important. It says a lot for you. So that if anybody comes away with anything out of this, looking at these two guys and see how they committed to their people and invest in their financial literacy to put them in a good position. I would take that away coming out of this webinar for sure. On our end, we're a little bit more unique position where we got to keep a few more folks around than most folks, and almost 100% of our time has been built in investing in those in the teams. Where our holes in regards to learning and development, and how can we secure the skills that those folks need when they get back, and how can we let them be involved in the development of those systems. And like John out on the East Coast, it's been humbling and exciting and motivating to see these folks that maybe haven't always had the opportunity to come up with a lot of the ideas and provide the input that they're allowed to put in now. It's been super exciting to see what they're coming up with and putting them in a position to work on their presentation skills and have them present their projects to a senior leadership team as to what's why the project's important, what are the features of that project, what are the benefits that it's going to provide, and how are you going to launch it. So I think from our side, investing as much as possible as into the team is going to come up. We're working on projects that we never thought we'd be able to work on in 5 or 6 years. We're like, if we could do that, boy, we'd really be in a good position. And so we've been able to knock out some of those projects, and now it'll just be execution when we get back and running.
Okay. All right, we've got 2 minutes left. So how about if we take 30 seconds just to speak to, we've got a lot of folks on this call, and we're going to be posting it out for folks to be able to look at it. Your colleagues across the country that are in catering companies that may be struggling. Some words of advice and encouragement. John Rudy, kick us off.
Words of encouragement is I have spent the last 8 weeks, and before that 18 months leveraging video conferencing, and now it's concentrated where it's the only option, and all the people that I'm working with cannot wait for it to end. They are yearning to be able to have interaction, and I think when we do come out, people will respend their money on catering. There is no other thing that provides the ROI or the experience of bringing people together. And I can already see it in regards to people saying, this has got to end. My days are no longer productive. I can't sit on a webinar for 8 hours and take in more than 20% of the content, where if I went to a summit and I got to interact with people and see people coming on and off the stage all day, it would be much more productive. So what we do is not going to go away, and this is super difficult, but if we can keep things like this going on and engage everybody, we'll come out on the other end, and this is a business that's going to never go away.
Okay, thank you. Cornell?
I echo what John said, Rudy, and also is, the only reason we're operational is because of our people. When we first started a couple of weeks ago, we were just taking it week by week, but being transparent, and John Lawrence mentioned, we're a great game of business practitioner and small giants, and we can't do this without our people. Being transparent and letting them know, hey, these are the situations, not sugarcoating it, and we're all in this together. And our sales folks are remote, and they're calling like they never have done before and bring in ideas. And some of them are wacky, and we laugh about it, we joke about it, continuing to kind of crowdsource those ideas. Never say no. Look at it. Maybe it makes sense, and we will survive. It might be a little bit different, but we all have to innovate. You know, there's a lot of throughout the years of the U.S. that industries change and things become obsolete and new things come out on top. So we just have to be kind of our industry leaders and continue thinking, okay, if we were having events, and what would we be doing? How can we tweak our businesses? What can we do different? And talk to our clients. I think that's the biggest thing, and seeing what they're going to need, and taking that feedback, and working with your teams and giving them the freedom to say, okay, what would you do? What can we do? Because they're the ones that are on the front lines and doing all the work, and sometimes they might give you a great idea. And a lot of organizations have been built on those ideas of the people that are doing the hard work. Sometimes we overthink leadership. It's our responsibility is to make sure the ship continues going, but we're responsible to our people, and getting their ideas is what creates great organizations. So have faith, continue to stay strong, communicate with your people, be transparent, and we'll all make it through, and we'll be better off for it.
Thank you. John Lawrence?
Joe, the two gentlemen in front of me, spoke eloquently about communication and the great game. I had the opportunity with my wife and a couple of colleagues to visit Tasty Catering years ago, and I know how great a company that is and how great their culture is. And frankly, they've been an inspiration to us and our company. But people first. Take care of our people. Make sure they're good, they're safe, that they're doing things, and getting them involved in what our future is going to be like is going to be paramount. And then the sales team, everybody communicates to the clients. We communicate to our vendors. We communicate until we're sick of hearing of ourselves. I think that's going to be, many more things that on top of that, but that's a great start, if you will. But I want a special thanks to you and John Reed once again for bringing together these two fine gentlemen to sit and chat it up for a little bit, and hopefully we'll get through this, be better, stronger, smarter people than we were a year from now.
For sure. John Reed, closing thoughts?
You listen to everyone's comments, and the one thing I think that everyone would realize and should realize is that their answers are within them. They're not out there. And if you go back and look at your operations, there's things that you've done in the past that might have been reactionary, or you don't know why they did. And we've been doing it the same way for 30 years and never realized, why are we doing that? Was it a reaction, or was it a good business decision? Now you're in an opportunity, the industry is an opportunity to say, hey, let's go back and really look at what we do. And does it fit those core values? Is it beneficial for our employees? Is it exceeding our customers' expectations? Does it meet what we do as an industry and as individuals? Because that's why you go to work every day, is because you believe and you love what you do. And this is a great time to really look at that and say, look around you. You've got great people. You've got the ability. We're caterers. We've cooked in areas with duct tape and plastic wrap, and we can survive. And we're in that position right now. But the answers are within. I mean, this is a good way to get your brain thinking, but you have the answers. You just don't realize you have them. They'll come from good questioning, being loyal to your employees, and working with your clients and your guests. And we will get through this.
Absolutely. I may just look in from having to, because I shop and cook in my own house, right? And when this all broke and all the panic, you go to the grocery store and there's nothing on the shelves, right? And so folks can cook for themselves and 2 or 3 people, and they could do that for a while, but they can't cook for 200, and they can't cook for 2,000. So there's no question about it. There's plenty of hope in the catering business. Really appreciate it. John Lawrence, Cornell Grigo, John Rudy, thank you so much for spending this time with us today. And thank you to all of you who've joined us. Be well, stay well. Let's beat this curve back. Have a great day.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Guys.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Bye.
All right.